Today's guest is Neil Twa. He is the CEO and co-founder of Voltage Holdings, a company specializing in launching, consulting, selling, and acquiring brands with a focus on the e-commerce channels such as Amazon FBA, which I actually had to look up since I'm not in that realm, fulfillment by Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, multi-channel. Neil has more than 15 years of experience selling private label products on Amazon. He is also the co-author, along with Reed Larson, of Almost Automated Income with FBA, Build a Profitable, Lifestyle-Driven Amazon Business, Exit for Millions. I like that. Even without any e-commerce experience. That one tweaks me a little because I'm an IT guy and I like people to pay me to build e-commerce sites, but that's all right. That's all right. We'll go
What
with
kind of
it.
experience? So that's the question.
In any case, thank you so much, Neil, for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So, for those who have not heard you
Yeah.
before, this may be my audience may be new for you.
hmm
Share a bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Yep. So my last name is Twa. If you're listening to this, if you're watching it or whatever, I'm not a small Asian guy. I got mistaken for that many times in my life, including my first contract after I left IBM to fly out to a contract deal. I just put up a fake website to get things going because I just sold the deal before I even have the website done. And I showed up and they wouldn't let me in the building because they didn't think that I was who I was because the
Wow.
picture on the front of the website was a stock photography of a very nice looking Asian guy. And when I showed up, I didn't match the photograph, and so they had to get me to, prove documentation. It was silly. Anyways, long story short, I had to geek out myself because when I was young, the internet, AOL, dial-up boards and stuff, I didn't have a computer. I had to go to my friend's house to access the computer, and we played on it forever on message boards and stuff. And I just kind of got hooked in the technology and the component of it. And that was, 16, 17 years old when that was coming out and really starting to play with it more. And so I didn't really dive into it into a full career or a realization of the career until I was in my third year of college when I realized as the internet was coming into its maturity cycle, Windows 3.1 was coming out. We were just past the DOS ages and we were headed towards Windows 95. That I was like, this is radical. This is changing dramatically. I mean, the first PCs were showing up. I got a job in the computer department just so I could help unbox the PCs and play with them. We set up the first computer lab in the college. Those days. I'm not that old, but a lot has changed very, very fast since the days of the internet. But when I was in high school, I was going to, I was bored with high school. For me, it was boring. I didn't really see the need to go to college. I actually was on a track to go to the Air Force. I was gone into the, I didn't actually go to the ROTC. I decided that in the last semester of my senior year, I was just going to go down and apply to go to the Air Force. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I was like, it shouldn't be a big deal. Go down there, such and such. Showed up, did the first level training, testing, etc., and failed out because I can't fit in the F-15E cockpit because I'm too tall. So my height is in the top half of my torso. So when the helmet was on, they couldn't close the canopy. So they're like, "Sorry, you're out." Turns out I met one other person in my life so far who also failed out roughly around the same time, but he was still like his legs were too long. So while they could close the canopy, he couldn't fit into the cockpit. So they booted him too, and he went to college. It's like one person in my life I've met that had a similar story. So then it was like, what do I do? I don't know. I got some experience. I want to, go to school, I guess. And so I just started applying. I had played music scholarship material. It was good enough to get to a scholarship level. I've been playing since the fourth grade. I was in trumpet and classical jazz music, and I've done all state and Oregon a couple times. And so I had enough experience to leverage that. And so I got a mostly full ride work scholarship to a liberal arts college out in Iowa. So I took it because I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to college. So I'm going to go to college to be a musician, which, sounds really cool, except, um, today it would be cool because you'd be living in the van down by the river. And everybody thinks that's super cool, right? Because you get your
Right.
Starlink and it's all cool, do your influencer thing and look how hip you are. Well, back then it was considered a failure to live. And so I'm like, well, I went through the first 2 years of college, failed out once because I didn't want to be there in the first place. They're like, well, get your grades up, figure this out. By the time I got that done, the internet came online. I was hooked. I'm like, okay, I think I want to do something in this. So I switched to business with this comp sci, computer science background. And then they wanted to teach me COBOL and Fortran. Like, I don't want to be in a server room learning COBOL and Fortran. What else you got? We're like, with this new language called C+. You should go check this out, right? This is like, web and development and HTML and active server pages and stuff. And I'm like, well, I did one semester of computer science at Missouri State University in MSSU and or MSU. I forget now what it is. It's the Donkeys in Warrensburg, Missouri. It's been so long. I took one semester and I failed. I went out because I decided to quit when the adjunct professor, who was a programmer with Sprint long distance in Kansas City, was like, "Well, if you want to learn web and technology programming, and that's not what we're going to teach you here in the computer
Mm.
science. Nobody's got that aspect. We're doing it on the job right now." And I'm like, "Well, how do I do that?" And how do I make the money you're making? And he's like, "Well, you just have to go teach yourself how to do the programming." And I said, "Okay." So I dropped out and went and got a degree in life instead, which means I taught myself programming till 2 or 3 in the morning. I was programming for work during the day, and then I just kept doing that until I literally got into a good contract with Sprint. I ended up where I wanted to go, and they had a cattle call internally and said, "Hey, we're starting this new division called Sprint PCS." I'm like, "Oh, what the heck is that?" What's the personal communication services? That's how they called it. And in essence, it was the first mobile phone launch. And I'm like, "Oh, dang, this is cool. This is startup stuff, right?" So like 98, 99, I wanted to get in on that. And so I put my hat in the ring and I got, they're taking warm bodies with some experience. I had been programming the systems and had a really good record. So they said, "You're hired." I'm like, "Good." So I'm 21. Here I am with, 5 people that are 30 years older than me. And I was told to manage them. No idea what I was doing whatsoever. But I was quickly figuring out that it's who you know that gets you there and what you know that keeps you there. And so I'd be staying up figuring it out. We manage to get that thing off the ground. We had 50,000 web pages under our control. We had the first 2,500 reps were using our knowledge system of, to answer questions, if you will, which was basically just organized web information and knowledge base. And then we started to become more technical with it and got bigger. And this, people grew and the business was growing extremely fast in that time frame with so many people signing up for mobile devices. Things were just like I swear that organization, if you'd gone somewhere and stripped over a wire and pulled the plug, the whole thing would shut down. I think it was duct tape and baling wire trying to keep this organization floating because it was moving so fast. But we launched the first mobile phones and it took off and everything went really well. They brought in some external contractors who were like, "Hey, we're going to do this new thing called knowledge management. We're going to do this thing called artificial intelligence, and we're going to call it human machine language learning to start off with, or what's called latent semantic engines." And I'm like, "Cool, that sounds technical. I want to learn all about that." So in 2 years, I got pretty good at it. In fact, I became one of the number one consultants for them. And with that, IBM, who came in on a project, saw what we were doing, saw the largest implementation of a knowledge management corporate environment first in history. And so they said, "Hey, you did a great job. Come to work for us." So it took me longer to fly out to Armonk, New York to do the interview than to do the job. I took 20 minutes to do the interview, and they're like, "You got a job." So I went to work for IBM. I didn't expect to get there, but that's how I was. No degree, just a lot of experience, real world, on the fly, getting it done, figuring it out, tenacity, perseverance, and really just trying not to get fired. And I got pretty good at it. And, we did that for almost 5 years until 2007. Got to work with some really smart people. They handed me a laptop, an Amex card, and a credit card and a laptop and said, "Go for it." And it was just funny because 2 years before I went to work for them, I couldn't even rent a car. At 25, I needed managerial approval to even rent a car to
Right.
travel, which is like stupid, but that's the way it was. So 27 or so going to work for IBM and flying around, totally different lifestyle. Never not used to this whatsoever, but it was planes and trains and automobiles, 2, 3 times a week. The
Mm.
last day I was there, the last year I was there, 2006, I traveled nearly 300 days that year. I was a road warrior, and in part of that year, I just literally gave up the apartment and just lived out of my suitcase. And on weekends, I'd travel to different little places because I got extra credits, so I could go to this location or go to Seattle or go somewhere else. So I just travel around, and then I'd fly back to the project on Monday or
Wow.
Sunday night, depending upon where I was at. So that was quite a crazy time, right? We were doing some fun things. Like people think AI today, right, Jeremy? They think AI is what you see in Chat GDP,
Right.
but it's not. It is
No.
so much deeper, so much more comprehensive, even down to the quantum computing stuff. We were playing with the concepts of large language models and creation on the Watson system. In Armonk, we were taking off time doing our knowledge management systems and theoretical. So we had 40% accuracy at that point that someone would call a technical line and we would know what they needed before they even knew it.
Hmm.
And so that was building out in 20 plus years ago. So we are way more advanced than most people even realize how advanced it is now. But it was fun to be there, and that's the place where they do the 18,000 patents every year. And got to work with the double docs from Harvard and Stanford and Yale and all these places. And I just sat around and learned and listened. I was the sticky glue between the middle. I could speak both languages. I understood the business, I understood the project, I understood the technology, I understood the service level agreements, I understood where we were going and what needed to occur. And so I was the glue that kind of made the whole thing come together because if you know technical and business, they don't talk much to each other very well. They speak completely different language. So I became a translator. That's probably the best way to explain it. And I was very good at translating. And making project successful was part of my success. But when we got to the end of 2007, IBM was like, hey, look, we need to change. We're shifting. You could move to a different location and kind of start at a different pay grade or whatever, apply, et cetera. Or you can take early retirement or you can move to Argentina. Well, I'm like, well, two of those things are out, so I'm going to retire. So I took early retirement in 2007. The same year I got married, and the same year I found out we were pregnant. I started my first business. And I that just went crazy from there. That was 18 years ago.
Wow. Wow. That's an interesting way to learn that you need to move on, right? This when your
Yeah.
company comes to you and says, "Well, we love what you did, but
Thanks for
yeah,
all
we
the
don't really
help.
need you anymore."
We called your number and you're out. Oh, well, that was great. So it really helped me to recognize my value.
Mm,
And what was considered safe and what was considered risky,
hmm.
right? And so by the time that I realized in June, I got that initial notification in February, I was mentally prepped to be gone. I was mentally thinking about what I wanted to do. I was mentally preparing myself for like what comes after this. And it was not getting a job. It was not going back. It was burning the boats, as we say, right? Firing the man. I'm out. I'm
Gotcha.
not going back. Then burning bridges, which actually turned out to be great because I went back a year later because they called me back on subcontractors for both public and private. They put me in a contracting relationship and said, here, come save these two projects and come launch this other project with the government, which turned out to be the 2010 census that my team helped deliver. But then we were also doing public and private sector. We were doing stuff with Boeing. I was doing stuff on the knowledge side with Cummins and doing all kinds of stuff in the different sectors. So that was actually kind of fun for a while.
And all that under the auspices of your own
Yes,
business?
I was just now as a higher paid gun. They came back and I was still trading time for money. That's probably the biggest realization is that as I was going through that process, I was trading time for money again, but it was a much higher amount and was just when I went to the sky when they came back and they said, "Hey, what do you need? We need you on the project." I said, I need X per diem per day and I want $250 an hour. And they're like, "Done. When can you get here?" And I was like, "Oh, okay. I'm in."
Yeah,
So here we go. And then I just didn't realize much later on that that was still trading time for money, and you have to pay for taxes. Ha, surprise. When you
right.
become a business owner, you own everything. Look at that. So things look really good on one end, but they become a fast reality check on the other when you're running the business and you're everything. And that took a few years to kind of figure that out. And eventually I've got connected to a gentleman. And by this point we were living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and he ran a small business. He was a consummate professional, understood how to do it, and just gave me an opportunity to work with him through a contracting relationship, and then just glean information from him. Just
Hmm.
learn like how are you doing this? How are you running your business? Like he mentored me and it was amazing. He taught me the number one thing: sales fixes everything.
That's
Sales
true.
fixes everything. You know what I'm saying? So once I
Yep.
figured out when I was doing the business, I wasn't actually selling the business. If I was trying to sell the business, I wasn't actually doing the business. And you get caught in that early stage conundrum of how do you break out from an individual into an entrepreneur, which is literally figuring out how you do a business, a service, or whatever, and then create full, force multipliers of yourself so that you can get out of the weeds and not do the selling and the delivering of the business. You got to figure out which one you're the best at. If you are the best deliverer, you better align yourself with an entrepreneur. If you're the entrepreneur, you better align yourself with a deliverable. And that means usually not being the same person.
Wow, that's actually very insightful because I think a lot of businesses fail. I've even worked for some small businesses that even had more employees. They had, 15,
Yeah.
20 employees, but the owner still tried to be both.
They failed to force multiply, replicate, and
Yeah,
distribute out of risk or the idea that I'm the only one that knows how to do it, or no one else can replicate, or just how much time and effort does it take me to get someone else to become an A player in my business?
right.
And then the concern, well, if I do that, they're going to leave. There's always that concern. So there's a lot of fear and what ifs that kick in. And Kiyosaki nailed it in his quadrants, right? Going from the self-employed to the entrepreneur to the business owner to the business investor. He really nailed that concept. And I didn't realize so much later that how that was taken to heart. I had grown up in a family where my dad was a hardworking mechanic, 12-hour shifts, He worked with his hands. He was a Navy veteran. They taught him boilermanship and stuff, but not about business. And so when he got out, that's what he did. And he provided what we needed. But if I wanted anything, I'd had to go get it on my own. He's a great provider in that way. He just didn't have the knowledge of understanding of business and money and finances. And in our house, we jokingly say, money was a four-letter word. You
Hmm.
didn't bring it up. You disrespected dad if he did. So we never really understood how that worked. And a lot of times I didn't see him because he was working night shift or third shift. And so, I might see him for a few hours in the day or night and catch him on the weekends.
Hmm.
So we just knew he was there and he's a great guy and he's alive. He's 83, lives on the hill just up from us on about 55 acres in the country here in Ozarks and get to see him all the time and love having him around. But he never taught me about the business stuff. It turns out later I had to learn that on my own and I got a lot of insights from my uncle who was a businessman and started his own boat company in San Diego and got to see it, got to see his product, got to see how he talked. And eventually, as I got a little older, he, had more and more phone calls with him and more conversations and gleaned a tremendous amount of information, Jeremy, that didn't actually kick in until probably the last 10 years. Because I just didn't reach the level of comprehension, business,
Hmm.
relationships, and network that he was talking about and I just didn't get it yet. And as I've gone through that steps, it's kind of unlocked in my mind. So to kind of borrow the phrase, he ended up kind of being my rich dad. He really taught me about abundance of money, giving and pouring into others first, then you receive. So your purpose and value should be to pour into others' success first. And then out of your success becomes your profit by helping others first. And so many business owners get caught in the idea that this is all mine. They put a
Hmm.
fence of ownership around it. And I did too when I first got going, because that's kind of how you think you're supposed to do it. But you're never going to support anybody else in that process who, by proxy, can help you if you're the one that knows it all. So, figuring out how not to be the smartest guy in the room was something that I learned through his mentorship and lessons learned. And then the gentleman who mentored me and started to realize I got to pull myself out of the guy who knows it all because that's what I did for more than a decade. I had to be the guy that knew it all,
Hmm.
right? I had to have the answers. And I don't have to have all the answers now. Imagine that. Got a whole team of people who have all the answers. That's what you're hired for. That's why you're the expert. I'm coming to you to get the answers. You're the one that needs to do it. I'm putting my trust in you. You need to go get this done. That's why you were hired. That's your job. And, building them into that positioning and building them up was an important part of my learning. So by the time I got to 2010, I'd started to figure that out. And instead of being the only consultant, I had 10
Hmm.
consultants that were working at high level contracting and management consulting, traveling around the country doing the work. It was my job to sell the business then.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, I'm assuming you're still doing the consulting as well today.
I do, but in a very different way. And I'm actually kind of getting out of the consulting world finally, because I've done it for so long in different ways that it's time for me to kind of shift up as I work deeper into my own products and brands and businesses and services and software. The idea now of consulting others is coming off of the main public and into just internally, because it's time to move that internal to the people inside of the company.
So tell me a bit about that. I mean, how
Yep.
do you make that transition to kind of build this successful online
Mhm.
business, especially with, you've talked about your background. You don't have
Yep.
a ton of formal, right? You learned it all yourself.
Yep.
You stuck your nose to the grindstone and just figured it out. How did that turn into a successful online business?
By accident. If it was planned, it probably wouldn't have happened. If I thought there was some plan of guarantee, I probably would have failed out and gone back and got a job. What I realized about myself is that I personally ingrained either through my life experiences, major failures in my personal life, losing a marriage by a number of reasons, me being 50% of the problem. Burned that marriage, learned that lesson the hard way. Eventually went bankrupt once because I over leveraged myself too far. So I learned what that boundary and lesson looks like, which is not always fun, but hey, there's worse things in the world. My wife I've been with for 18 years had a super scare and literally died two times in a 36-hour period after a very failed hysterectomy was botched in the surgery. And so she fought for her life for 36 hours. And then, with four kids under the age of five, I had a, 2-day window where I was trying to reconcile the fact I was going to be a single father with small children because I wasn't sure she was going to make it because she literally died in front of me and they resuscitated and brought her back. So with all of these, and she's okay now, she's alive, she's doing good. But with those challenges came focus, came purpose, came change, came risk, came understanding where the boundaries of my personal abilities are, what I'm willing to tolerate, what I can tolerate, my coping mechanisms. in life and how to deal with those, and just came down to a realization that I personally, I'm trying to say this with like no pride. I just realized I have the ability to be more tenacious. I have the ability to pivot harder. I have the ability to oversee very difficult situations and get past them and find a way through. I can see very disparate situations and find a path to make them connect. It's just kind of a natural God-given talent I was given. And so I've been able to use that. And it comes, and I see it in my pattern of life. Being the guy that translated in the middle, I see now how that relates to the path that I'm on. So it wasn't a plan. I think it's just I went with every step that made sense. I didn't say no, I said KNOW. And I just said, I don't know. Let's figure it out. Instead of just saying, no, I need this. No, I need a guarantee. No, I'm not going that way unless somebody tells me that's the right path. I just said, I don't know. Let's go. And with that, I just kept being willing to learn. I don't know. Let's go. How do we deal with the taxes? Well, now I deal with taxes really well. I have a tax accounting firm. I got tax strategists. I've got accountants and bookkeepers. I hired the people that I now understand I'm dangerous enough to know what they should be doing correctly so that they can do their job. I know how to manage by exception because I learned the process of management, project management, system management, people management at large scales, and then moved it down to my business. And then I've moved it back into different systems and processes and scales within the e-commerce world where we do physical product and brand movement now. So translating that back to just skills and knowledge, when I got through the process of learning how to do it myself, I would then be able to translate that back to others and then pour into their ability until they got it, until their aha moments got it, and then said, okay, now you got this. You don't need me anymore. Kind of like riding a bicycle with training wheels. Your training wheels aren't coming off until I see that you have this. And, that process became more simplified by the use of just simple tracking and management and objectives and key results. So without getting overcomplicated, it's like, here are your objectives. Here are your three key results. I'm hiring you to, validate that you can accomplish those objectives and results. We're going to do a 30, 60, 90-day period. You figure that out. We're going to train you through it. If not, you're walking yourself out. And that's
That's
exactly
fair.
what happens.
I mean, that's totally fair. I mean, more companies should actually be like that
I
somewhat
agree,
with
especially small business owners.
yeah, especially small business owners because you're taking on
Yeah,
a lot of risk bringing somebody into your
correct.
business. You need to understand how they're going to, interview process never truly tells you everything about a person, right? And
Yeah, putting
so
them to
there,
work actually tells you the process. So we hire fast and fire faster. So they will, yeah. So with an objective and a key results that is both communicated and understood, they know their particular process. Now, I ran up to 12 employees at one point, and we had 21,000 square foot of warehouse, and we were shipping a lot of product and moving things and shaking and baking. But we ran into, the cost of payroll and human capital costs are extreme. They're the biggest thing all business owners face. It's the most difficult process. And if you're not great at managing people, you're going to struggle with this, right? Turns out, since I was 21, I was figuring out how to struggle through people management. So I got better and better at it, better just by experience and time and failing up and seeing good people and seeing the bad ones and just looking for patterns in that and then kind of working my way through it. No formal training, I think, would have taught that point because literally, unless you execute it, you're not going to get the experience. And
Mhm.
without that experience, positive or negative in the fail forward process, you aren't going to get the wisdom. You cannot simply just garnish the wisdom like a 19-year-old, high school or life coach on the internet with a blue check. You have to literally go through the experience of executing and failing, but not letting the failure define you, letting the failure define the process.
Mhm.
So as you go through that and realize, well, there's got to be a better way than hiring people. What if I change this and instead I spend more time building owner operators, get them successful in this model, and then partner with them in other ways? And
Mhm.
that is now the model by which we deploy our business builders, our product partnerships, and our acquisition strategy. Is that I have now spent more than 6, 7 years raising up business owners who have successful companies that we've trained directly in our processes, our technology, our people, our resources, et cetera, to build companies that they're successful in, and the cream of the crop rises to the top. So the ones that become the more successful, we say, hey, we have a product partnership. Would you like to, take a percentage and joint venture with us? We have a business we're about to acquire. Would you like to become an operator with us in
Mhm.
that? And they are already consummate, trained, successful operators. And they almost always go, yeah, I'm in. What are we doing? And I don't need to tell them the objectives and key results. I don't need to micromanage them through the process. They're doing it already. They're running a company. And that became a more successful way for us to actually build and expand brands was to train up and find out who's the most successful in doing it and then partner with them.
That's very interesting. It's very much like, the AAA teams in baseball, right? You, you
Yeah,
you put the players
raise them up.
there, they prove themselves, and you go, okay, you're ready for the big leagues. Let me offer you something. Let's
You
talk
you
about it.
can do that in an employee format. However, the
Right.
cost to a business and a smaller startup, 1 to 5 million, is a very costly business approach. Takes a lot of time. If you're going to self-capitalize or bootstrap some of that, there's a different cost associated with that. Obviously, everybody thinks it might be sexy to take capital. I've raised 100 million in capital. That sounds really sexy, but I gave it away. I gave it up. I didn't actually execute it. Shut it down for various reasons. But it sounds great, but then you take to totally different levels of responsibility. And what a lot of business owners do is instead of focusing on sales fixes everything and what do I need to support that customer, get them to buy, get them to rebuy, get them to become a longer customer with me, they
Mhm.
focus on the turn and burn aspect of how many customers they can get through and then fail to really continue to meet the needs so that they can pull people in and have the capital to run the business, pay themselves, pay the people, grow the business. I see a lot of small $1 to $5 million companies who are flying by the seat of their pants. They're
Mhm.
running a business on a gut feel out of QuickBooks, right? And that's a dangerous situation to be in when it comes to capitalizing the business or the people around it or ensuring the quality of service of your product or brand.
And is this where Amazon came into play in terms of
Yeah.
its capability and
Yep. Yeah, it's
opportunity?
infrastructure, right? I mean, really, as a digital marketer who was then leading consulting, and I started the digital marketing world to support my business. So I went out and trained myself on digital marketing, and I bought courses. And literally, some of the first courses I got trained on were guys who are now my best friends, and that was like way before I even knew who they were. But I got into the digital marketing and found I was really good at understanding, reading the data, seeing the connection to the market. Again, that same skill set was kicking in where I could kind of see myself in the middle of connecting people with products and services. So I did my own business development and lead generation, but then I got bored with the speed at which that was going. And so I started affiliate marketing. I had the skill, I had the knowledge, I had the capability. So I just started affiliating other people's products. So I found out I was really good at that because when I connected the dots between media marketing and the product, I could get that done really well. In fact, I was making more money than the consulting side. So as of 2010 to 2012, I let go of the consultants that I had because I was making more money without them. And I was doing it in less time from an internet connection. And I wasn't working 10 hours a day doing it. So that became a lot easier. That led me to Amazon because in 2009, 8-ish or so, Amazon bought a logistics company, a freight management logistics company. They rebranded it to what they called FBA, Fulfilled by Amazon. So the warehousing, the logistics, the ERP systems, all that, last mile customer delivery is what they purchased. So they could take their book business and expand it out and then add on other products and eventually services. Jeff Bezos, gave the motto, sell all things to all people in 30 seconds or less. And that's exactly what they're doing, right? So when I
Mhm.
saw they were investing billions in infrastructure, and it made sense for me as someone who was in the digital side now of the marketing products and services to not have to warehouse the products, build them in my house, etc., but get them into Amazon system and just do what I did best, develop the relationship with the people and the product and the brand and the service. So when I discovered it, that was one of the things I loved about it because I didn't have to warehouse and ship the products from my house. Amazon would do that. You ship your products in, they take care of that. They handle the customer service, they handle the last mile, they handle the economic engine. It's just my job to figure out what to sell. So the phrase, what the hell to sell, kicked in. And that's part of our first mantra, the thing we've stuck with for all these years, right? It's the whole thing about which product to sell makes up the entire opportunity.
Hmm.
And as somebody who had also been in inventions previously and has names on patents and stuff for inventions that are super cool that no one's ever going to hear about, I realized that's not the real opportunity. Innovation is the opportunity. And as we started to test products in 2012 on Amazon, I realized really quickly that this economic system was pretty much unrealized by everybody who was using it yet. But I had a moment there of clarity where I thought this is going to become huge. I don't know when, I'm not sure how, but I could see how it is. And when I stumbled upon that, you're going to geek out on this because it was the technology. Amazon's system, they called it the A9 engine, which was basically as I took about 18 months of that 2011, 2012 into 2013 timeframe to play with their engine, flip products, and understand what it was doing. I realized it was the latent semantic search engine. It was using knowledge management systems, most like the ones we built in the IBM days, to deliver product information to people, not information like Google or the knowledge management systems. They just tweaked it. They said, oh,
Mhm.
here's your product instead. But the underlying framework, the engine that was running under there, was a semantic-based search engine. And as soon as I realized that, it clicked like a light bulb went off in my head. We'd been programming them, we had been training them, we had been using them on large scale, 1,000 transactions a second plus. And I thought, oh my gosh, like this is the engine, this is it, man. And I just took that and ran with it. And so, as I knew it needed to see things, as it was looking to respond to copy and graphics and the keywords and when you touched it and how you touched it and all these things, I built a 7, 21, 30-day launch process that ended up becoming an industry standard for a while. I taught it and we hit seven figures on our brand in 2014 because of that.
Wow.
And when we started to see that economic engine, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. We could pick a product, we could pick an industry, we could get it ranked in the engine within 30 days or less, and we could just, these products would just fly off the shelves like crazy fast. And that economic engine is huge, really. Most people didn't understand then. It's even bigger now. It's like 7,000 units a minute. Peak time is 9,000 units a minute, right?
Wow.
And so it is an absolute juggernaut now. And so to answer your question, yeah, I got into it and I changed into the branding side. Instead of flipping products and doing the lead gen stuff, I actually started to build brands, which was a big change. Why? Because I'm not just flipping products and trying to move a few hundred units here or there. It was I'm building an intrinsic valued company with a brand that can drive multiple product types and can kind of live on, make money 24/7, create more automations, and doesn't need to be micromanaged. And when I discovered the engine of Amazon at that point, I was just hooked.
Hmm. That's very interesting because, I mean, brands are a big deal. People
They
don't
are
realize
a
how
long time.
impacted they are, right?
Yes.
They get a brand, they buy a product, they go, I'm always going to buy that product, that brand now product, right?
Oh yeah, or
It's
just the connectivity to it from historical reasons, your family.
yeah,
Like if I say Lucky Strike,
yeah.
right? Do you smoke?
Nope.
Do you know what it is?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, right. So we all have that connection to it, whether we use it or not,
Right.
right? There's a component of NLP that plays into that, right? That neuro linguistic programming aspect. And as you look at the way that people consume information, and in my entire life have been revolving around how people consumed information just in time, right answers, right information. At this point, it was just right products of information. It's dawned on me around 2016, 2017 that the entire system was changing towards AI,
Hmm.
that all the information they were building, all the databases, all everything, the semantic engines, the human machine aspect of it was moving towards a future of AI. I just saw the writing on the wall. I knew the history. I knew it had to be coming. And then I started to see the tendency in the system turning towards that. And then they started to announce it about 2 years ago that they were moving towards what they call Cosmo, which was the large language model engine for Amazon. And the
Yep.
whole internet by itself had started to shift that way already. Meta, Google, online informations, TikTok, social media, everything had been moving to what people didn't realize was a complete AI driven model underneath the hood. They just weren't telling anybody. That's how the systems had changed. And they were letting all the data compile. They were letting all the engines learn. They were letting all the large language models be trained because it takes years and years and Zeta and Peta and Meta and all these other top data. It's so much data, it's insane to get those engines to train and learn and get their fault tolerances down, right? Because they have an error that occurs, and the more data they are fed, the less the errors occur. And as that continues to grow in the engine, the customer needs and customer intent get built out of that. And that's why certain videos go viral or can be manipulated to go viral. That's why certain products can take off and others don't. And as I started to realize this engine and building more brands and testing more products and seeing what was working and why it didn't go, we developed a system we call Greenlight. Green, yellow, red. Woo, super complex, right? If it goes green, we sell it. We market test it in the market and we find out is our data good. So instead of
Mm.
become a product person, which I was doing up until 2016, 17, we became a data engine. We churned everything, and it sounds like opposite. Like, why didn't I get that when I first discovered the whole engine? Well, I was just so busy throwing out the product.
Sure.
And as we got all the products out there thinking, well, people are loving our products, I'm like, well, why are they loving our products? It was because we can rank it. And why are we ranking? Is because we know what the engine wants. And if we know what the engine wants, what's it doing? And it finally dawned on me that it is all about the engine. And when we shifted that focus, we started to develop tools and processes to determine, what these engines are doing
Mm.
and then how the models were working. And then we built a system around it to predict and look at data that basically gave us the right data set with the right location, right relevancy that told me which particular products are most in demand. Imagine that, right? And then if I produce a product that's a quality product, I'm meeting the demand. So there's two sides to this. There's the sales fixes everything, and then there's making sure that they like the product and will give it a good review and don't return it.
Right.
You get those two things right, and the brand takes off extremely fast. If you have this amazing Neil invention no one's ever going to hear of, but you don't sell and market it, guess what happens? Nobody ever sees it.
Right.
Nobody ever buys it. And that's what everybody's greatest fear is. What the hell do I sell? Gets down to, I'm afraid no one's going to buy it. What they're really saying is, I don't know which product I'm going to sell. And that's actually the wrong thing. What they need to say is, well, if I tell the engine, this is what I think I am doing, and the engine says, I get it, this is what you're doing, and can repeat it back to you, then the engine clearly understands your value proposition. Get that wrong, and the whole thing fails.
Hmm.
Right. So when I tell the engine now what data it is looking for, I'm asking it to basically validate that it has created a model of my product data that is accurate for the demand that exists of customers who want a product just like that. If I don't get that right, everything else fails.
Hmm.
That makes sense?
Yeah. So do you test? I would assume then you do a testing where you're testing multiple products and you're seeing which ones
We not
are,
only just test, we test in a virtual environment.
okay.
So when I have data now that's pulled back, and actually thanks to Amazon updating some of its systems in the last 18 months, I now have used AI agents to go in and get Amazon accurate data from Opportunity Explorer and other things behind their systems and their brand registrations and other things that you wouldn't be able to see, but I can get access to and go in there and pull that data, put it into my model, and then have my model shift it all around and then pull out which product and data segment I should look at. So I have
Hmm.
these proprietary algorithms and stuff we all developed. It takes all of Amazon's raw, data and sales data and then manipulates it forward into a dashboard and tells me exactly where it is, what it should sell, how much it's exactly selling, which one's exactly selling the demand, and then which products are meeting that exact demand on Amazon to the tune of, 25,000, 50,000, 75,000 units a year. How many searches are attributed to that particular product? It's just an amazing data engine now. We call it the
Hmm.
Cayman data system. And with Cayman and this analysis and data engine, I can literally see exactly the 103,002 needs that meet all of Amazon's 730 billion in sales. So, or 630 billion, 730 billion. So it's just ridiculous. Somewhere around 700 billion, I'm going to say, fact check me on that one. But around 700 billion in sales is met by those customer needs now defined by the Cosmo engine after going through all of its data. So if I know the need, I know the intent, I know how they got there, I just simply put the product in the right place. I make sure the image, copy, and graphic meets what we call our ELFs requirements, which is part of that programming of language. We use AI and engines. We take all of our product data and give it to an AI engine and say, what do you like? What do you not like? It's basically polling a virtual 1,000 people and then tells us exactly whether or not they would buy this product versus another one. And it is so statistically accurate, we don't even take it to the public anymore.
Hmm.
We used to take it to public forums and groups, and we had a couple of tools we used that would tell, has Prime members, 10, 20,000 Prime members, and then they'll tell you which product they think they would buy based on what image and graphics and copy they see. Well, I have virtual simulations in my tools now that do that,
Hmm.
right?
Wow.
And then it's accurate, more accurate, and takes less time than going out. So I know the image, copy, listings, and graphic not only meet the customer demand, but they are data entangled with that Cosmo engine to give it exactly the right presence the minute it goes live. So when it builds its framework of what is this product look like, it gets it accurately
Now,
done.
how does that work on the back end for you in terms of producing the products though?
Yeah. So once I know I have the data engine, I can sell the dang thing because I know that with 80% confidence before I launch the product. Then
Hmm.
I go and I manufacture the right product. So if I know there's two or three products out of the seven that I want to go test, I'll go get 100 units of a blank test product, which would be referred to as like a white label. And I take that 100 units, I put it into my data segment, and I put it in the system, and I find out what the market tells me. I'm not smart enough to tell the market what it wants. That's what people who invent do. I'm an innovator. What I want
Right.
to do is find out what the market thinks it wants from me. I want to innovate that difference and give it back to the market and say, here, this is what you asked for. Right. So once I put that out there, 100, 200, 300 units, we call it our 5 by 5. We're going to put five products in, 100 units per product. And then the law of averages kicks in. Right. One or two of those products is going to take off. And then I
Mm,
follow the data.
sure. Wow. It's so much, it's so interesting because it's very similar to SEO and how websites are trying to generate traffic. It's just now it's all contained within the Amazon model itself.
Yeah, the first go-to-market system is Amazon. Why? It's 49% of the customer market
Yeah.
demand. It's
Yeah.
built-in traffic. I'm leveraging their audience. I'm moving them, I'm not creating the engine of demand that is necessary, like viral videos and demand creation platforms. I'm literally going to the demand and I'm saying, do you want this? Do you want this version, this version, this version? And half of the US market tells me if they want it or not. What do I do with the rest of that data, Jeremy? I go out to the rest of the market, right?
Yeah.
Once I incubate that product in Amazon, and I can incubate up to 7 or 8 figures over 3 to 5 years, then I can take that and move it into omni channels. I take that product into Shopify, TikTok, retail, other
Mm,
locations, and I say, hey, half the market wanted this. Did the other half of you want it?
that's
And guess
smart.
what happens? Yeah.
That's yeah, right. So it doesn't have to stop at Amazon. That's just
Ooh, it
your
doesn't
almost
stop.
like your it's almost like your experimental pool because their
It's an
model is so
incubator.
great, right? Yeah, an
100%. We
incubator.
incubate the products on half of the market that tells us exactly what they want. Once we define that by 100, 200, 300, 500, 600 units a day, then
Hmm.
we simply go out to the market and say, okay, Mr. Market, we know who you are. We know what you're buying. We know how you're asking for it. We know what you want. And we simply go out to the market and make hyper relevant marketing on Shopify, TikTok, or put it into retail or Wayfair or any other platform where there's traffic where that product can sell. And guess what happens?
Right, because there's 51% more out there somewhere.
They're all out there buying it, right? They're just not all buying it on Amazon.
Right.
So we don't have an Amazon business. That's a sales channel. Somebody who comes to me and say, "I have a business, okay? I'm selling on Amazon." And the other channels? Only Amazon. I say, "Well, you've got a sales channel." A full
Right.
business has at least 3 channels minimum on it, and where your product is being moved into market, that's a holistic business market because now you have what's called the halo effect. Okay. 30% in television ads now, streaming ad services, TikTok, Netflix, Prime, Twitch, et cetera, all that stuff, they fall back to Amazon, right? Even television commercials now, 30% fall back to Amazon, even if it doesn't say Amazon on it. The halo effect is what's referred to that. If you buy Meta and TikTok and paid traffic ads on any of these other platforms, up to 30% it will fall back to Amazon. It'll be demand capture platform. So once I open that up, I'm creating what's called a halo effect. If they buy and see, they're going to pick one of those platforms they like, but they're still going to be able to find mine when they do it.
That's fantastic. So then that begs the question, how does someone get started with that sort
Yeah.
of thing if they don't know how to do it?
Well, that's the beauty, all right? With a system and process, you don't have to have a product. You don't even need to know what you're going to sell. You have what we call a circle of confidence.
Hmm.
You have a background, you have a technology, you have experience, you have intrinsic value in what you do and who you do. You even have a whole bunch of products around you. In your life, you probably buy from Amazon, right? Which means you bought products, and there's 60% of those products on Amazon are sold by third-party sellers like us. So there's no reason you can't sell one of them. The question then becomes, as what the heck do I sell? The conditioning of any product that's environment around me, and I simply need to go into, say, a software like mine and say, oh, I'm looking for outdoor products. So you just type in the word outdoor, and what it's going to do is tell you what are the demands of outdoor products on Amazon. And from there, I'm going to be able to cycle down into the product types that currently live in a little location in Amazon's big data filing engine called a node. All right, nodes where that product lives down in the base and bowels of that big engine, but it's the most relevant location for that product. Okay, if I'm going to sell a piece of outdoor gear and I want to sell a tent, then I want to be living in a node called tent, if there is one. And that's very relevant to the AI engine, right? With that point, the question then becomes which tents? So as you do your economic product research, you go down into the engine and it literally says these are the top tents that are selling.
Hmm.
It tells you exactly the top tents that are making up that demand for people who are buying tents on Amazon. And then you look at it and say, well, which ones are the most profitable? So we go by the numbers. When I go by the numbers, I'm looking for a product that is typically 50 to 500 in retail price point. It has more than $12 in net profit per unit because what you keep is all that matters, right? And
Right.
so when I find that product that's in demand, has all those variables met in our green light process, that's the one I test. That's it. It's not that complicated. When the data is proven and it's Amazon's data, then you pick the product that's it's like Jeff Bezos coming and being like, "Hey, Jeremy, sell this product, dude. You can't lose. Just get it in the market. It'll sell." And that's what happens. So we go get the product, we validate the product, we put it in the market. So beginners can do this. Novices and people without business experience can do this because when they want to answer the question, what the hell to sell, it usually comes down to making sure it's going to have sales. Well, sell one of the products that's already in demand. Just make sure that it's profitable. Now,
Right.
don't marry the product. That's a big thing we say around here. Don't marry
Hmm.
your product, steal a girlfriend instead. right? There is no product that can't possibly sell. It's just which product will sell more at a higher velocity at the right profitability. And you might make a 2 millimeter shift in an outdoor product and say, well, I found tents, but oh, look, the camping stoves sell 10 times more. I didn't realize that, but the data shows me right here. Tents sell 15,000 a year, but I'm seeing 40, 50,000 camping stoves sold every year. Maybe I should actually sell that one instead. You make that little 2 millimeter shift, and guess what happens? You suddenly align a product in the market that people want. But what else happens with a camp stove when people are camping, Jeremy? They buy tents. So
Right.
now I know I should sell tents.
Right. And
I'm guessing, probably.
they buy cookware and they buy all
They,
the
and it's going to
ancillary.
tell you right there, these are the things. So it's not even guessing. It's just building out a brand of products that I haven't married because I'm looking for the ones that sell the greatest velocity. Products have a life cycle. As we talked about earlier, brands live on for even if they're not your brand or something you don't like. If I say all, iPhone people are fanboys and all Android sucks, somebody on here is going to get pissed off. But people are brand driven, right?
Yeah.
But they live for a long time. But how many variations of the Android phone and iPhone have there been?
Yeah.
Product has a life cycle, right? Brands live on forever. So we don't marry those products until they prove and they'll have a certain life cycle. Some will go for 2, some go 4, some go 8 years. But they all have a life cycle. So we don't marry them. We keep putting new ones in there. And the other component is just realizing that there's an economic engine back there. There's that AI, that system. It's looking to produce products to give it to the right segment of people at the right time so they'll buy it in 30 seconds or less.
Hmm.
That's advanced marketing beyond things you and I can develop now. So we take advantage of those marketplaces because they have such advanced ways of getting so much traffic so fast into these systems with so much opportunity. You just have to look for the right product and place to put it. And the final component of all that really wraps up is that you're building a business. For anybody who's getting started, you need to realize this is not a side hustle or a hobby business. When you get involved in a physical products business, you need to be a professional owner operator. You need to be thinking about this is a 4 to 5 year venture. I could exit this as a saleable asset in 4 to 5 years. We call it the platinum principle, right?
Hmm.
Here, the golden parachute principle. We're
Yep.
the platinum. You pull our ripcord anytime you want to. But there are certain opportunities to get above 500,000 and 1 million in profit in the business. And when you pull the ripcord, then there's a generational wealth exit on the other side of that in 4 to 5 years. And the beauty of that all is it's built into a system and a training and a process that makes sure you understand to follow the steps to get there. We want you to become what we call part of the 8%. Those are the people, 8%, if you know the numbers, who make it past year 4 and 5.
Oh, yeah.
92% of businesses fail in years 4 and 5. Why? They don't understand the fundamentals of business in years 1, 2, and 3. It's a big component of making sure you understand that when you build these businesses right from the very beginning, they're worth more in the end than at any time during the business building phase. So when you exit them, guess what? Who's the exit partner? So as I've moved from those quadrants, I'm now on the business investor side. So I have a
Hmm.
private equity group and a mission. It's called Patriot Growth Capital. We invest in veterans and their families and communities to support the veteran community. The Patriot Growth Capital is a veteran backed and funded initiative to put veteran operators into the companies that we acquire. We're under a letter of intent to acquire about a $10.5 million company right now. To bring a veteran in to help us with that, or 2 veterans as a part of this business model. And then we're going to go acquire another one and another one. And those who raise up businesses with me have an opportunity to be acquired by us. And then we take over operations and grow them up to the next exit.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. So, Neil, I'm going to ask you an interesting question. I mean, you have had some amazing experience in the e-commerce field, in the technology field, in your building your career that brought you all the knowledge along the way, right?
Mm.
That helps you be what you are today. But looking back at that journey, what's something you go, man, why was it that way? Why does that have to be that hard? And what's something you look at and go, why does that have to be a stumbling block for people who want to succeed like I have
Yeah.
and hopefully not have to hit that?
I don't recommend people push boundaries too far for life with family, kids, and responsibilities and other things. By the same measure, though, if I wasn't willing to find out where those boundaries are and were, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. It's the old risk reward ratio. What I found is in time, I was willing to have a higher risk threshold for things that I was doing in order to truly believe that the reward was just on the other side of it, right? And just always understand that next step might not be a perfect step. So we say in something, do something imperfect and something perfect happens along the way. as I've gone and perfectly doing things and failing over and over and over again. It's just the natural process of learning, executing, and gaining that knowledge and wisdom. So people who can't cope with that, don't understand that mechanism, don't understand the components of what I'm saying as a part of their normal life right now, are going to have a hard time in business. It's not for
Mm.
everybody. Right? Entrepreneurialism is a beautiful thing to find your place to create yourself as a business owner. But entrepreneurialism, make no mistake, is the process by which you fail, learn, and understand how you become a business owner. Right? To become
Yep.
a business owner is very different than somebody who has no idea how to run a company and is like, I'll buy one and I'll just go take care of it. No, no, you won't. That's a terrible mistake. If you have not gone through the entrepreneurial stage and risked the reward, if you've never put payroll on a credit card before, if you've never wondered where your next month payments are going to come from, you're not really been an entrepreneur yet. But that process is something that others are afraid of. That process is something that stops people from ever trying. They need a guarantee to leave a company, leave a job, invest capital, do something. And because they can't see the other side of that, the reward bigger than the risk, they'll never do it. And they'll always want something to guarantee or some excuse or some perfect way to get it done. And there is none of that in this. We've seen that meme with the spaghetti, it just popped into my head, where they talk about, everybody wants to go from here to there, a straight line. And entrepreneurialism in business is really just a big squiggly bunch of spaghetti.
Yep.
It is like that. And if for some people's minds, they can't handle that. For some people's minds, they're not attributed to it, right? So who are those people that fit that profile? They are literally people who've known that something is better on the other side of what they're doing. They know that they sledged through their job, or I built this dentist practice or this medical practice, but now I am a slave to the machine and I want out of it. I'm a high income earner, but I'm getting really tired of this. I travel, 3 times away from my kids every week or half a month. I'm getting tired of that too. They just realize that, this is their opportunity if they're going to do it in the next 10 to 15 years before they, quote unquote, retire. They
Mhm.
just realize that that opportunity has weighed them down. The generational legacy aspects of them and finally hit it. For me, it caught up at the IBM days, and I'm setting around that last consulting gig where you have the final meal and you're like, I was setting and talking, and it comes to the end. You have one of those, right? And
Yep.
some of you are listening to this probably been that too. And I'm listening to this, and it just struck me because I knew that was kind of coming to an end. I was willing to listen and hear things differently. And I'd done this before a number of times. It just didn't strike me. And there's a gentleman, very nice man, probably 52 or so, if I'm not mistaken. I'm 28 or so. He's 52. And he's on the phone talking to his wife, who then passes him to his daughter, telling him, I'm sorry, I missed this. I can't wait to see you, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have kids at that point, and I was thinking about a marriage with a lady who I was falling in love with and wondering what the future would hold. And it all suddenly struck me that I don't want this.
Mm.
I can't do that. I will not be 52 telling my kids that I don't want to be around them. So when I flipped that on its head, my purpose and value changed. Profits came second, purpose and value came first. So in 18 years, I've traveled away from my kids maybe 5 times for just a couple days. I don't travel without them anymore. We work as a family unit. We homeschool our kids. We do everything together. I created a lifestyle by design, which I was willing to risk other things in the world, say no to events, say no to other things, so that I could keep the purpose and value of my family ahead of the business. And I've been, I believe, rewarded and blessed in those endeavors by having the business opportunities I've had that don't exclude me from my family.
Mm.
So for those who want that, just stay in that realm, stay in that train of thought, stay in that risk reward ratio, see the reward greater than the risk and take it. You've only got one opportunity to do it. No one's going to do it for you. And I think a lot of people are waiting for some magical button to be pushed. And I will tell you from my experience, there's no magical button. What you do is you just walk. You fail perfectly, and you realize that the opportunity begins at the end of your excuses.
Mm. That is so good. Yeah. So Neil, what's coming up for you here in the near future? You've
Yeah.
launched the book,
Yep.
and I think I'm going to promote that for sure.
Okay,
Make sure
cool.
people see it,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Then we got some copies to give away too, right?
that's right. We have some copies to give away, and
Excellent.
I'll have the link in the description for the video, and in the social media post.
Okay.
What's coming up for you though in the near
Yeah.
future?
Well, we're launching 3 new brands right now. I'm super excited about them. They're high-end kitchen appliance and brands around the home. We're gonna go tap a couple of major brands on the shoulder and basically poke them until they buy us. So either they're gonna try to destroy us or buy us. One thing's gonna, that's the whole plan here, right? So I'm excited about those getting into market. And so we have 9 brands right now that we control, and about 3 more we're starting up that are in our business operations controlled by us. And then we are taking the proprietary information, our Cayman data software that we've been holding on to for a while, and we now have enough product pipeline, brand maturity, etc., that it's time to release that to the public. So in June of this year, 2025 is 2025, right? Man, this year's going fast. We are going to launch that software into the public. It's a business system software, okay, which means that it will come with the training, the business, the process, the systems, the methodologies to take and go through a 12-week sprint to get your first private label product in the market. All of my tools, data and intelligence will be released in that and giving that out to the public. We're going into the market with it. So that's one of our bigger things this year we're going to be shooting for is giving people an opportunity to get the time, freedom, data, information, and ability to create a product and give them a framework and system and guardrails that they can hopefully stay within to walk that process and see them overcome any challenges and issues that they can maintain, understand how to deploy the capital correctly and then very smartly with their capital as well as their time, energy, and attention to it. And everything is going to be structured into that product and as a service that will come out. And so I'm really excited to get that in the market here in roughly around June. So that's a big initiative for us this year.
Wow, that's amazing. It sounds pretty cool. It's I love it because it's going to help other businesses, right? It's a
It
like you
is.
said, you like to build others as well, and I think
It
that this
will.
will be a way to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, it absolutely will. Anybody in the aspiring entrepreneurial world or somebody who might have a business on DTC, Shopify, Amazon, etc., it's going to pull data from one of the largest economic engines in our country. So if you are not on Amazon, it doesn't matter. You're going to see data that you always wanted to see and tell you exactly what to sell. And this is where I'm really excited about bringing it into the market.
That's awesome. Well, Neil, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been an
Thank you.
awesome conversation, getting to know you personally, as well as understanding your business philosophy and how you've been able to leverage that success. So I look forward to seeing the product launch.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's been an honor. I appreciate you spending some time with me.